So what's the best booster build in Guild Wars 2? So let me first start by explaining what a booster build is at all. So a booster build is a build that uses the gear that you get from the level 80 boost. When you use the level 80 boost in Guild Wars 2, you actually receive full exotic celestial gear. And this is actually rather difficult to get otherwise. It's one of the most expensive exotic versions of gear that exists in Guild Wars 2. But it's not only expensive, but it's also really good. So today I want to cover all the classes and how they use this exotic celestial gear and rate them in a tier list. Don't worry, actually every class can make use out of this, but we will see how the tier list looks at the end. So let's start with the first class, which is Warrior. So what's Celestial Gear? Celestial Gear is providing every single stat at a lower amount than you would go, for example, if you get Berserker Gear, would get Power, Precision, Ferocity at a very high level, but Celestial Gear gives you every single stat, so all the stats that are in the game at a little bit lower level than you would get for a 3-stat gear combination. This means that some classes make use out of all the stats and therefore Celestial is really good at them. Some classes lack a little bit of weapons or boons or whatever to support using all the gear stats that you get with this. So of course, most of the time Celestial Gear is more valuable to use on some kind of condition or hybrid build. Power builds are typically way more favored towards a specific gear set that uses only power-based gear stats. So with that out of the way, as always, special shout out to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon that help me keep the lights on. And now let's start with Warrior. So Core Warrior, I would say, makes use out of Celestial quite decent. It's not the best because you just have access to your longbow and your sword for the most part. If you have Heart of Thorns or Soto, you can also use the torch. But typically I would say I consider stuff here that if you have Core Warrior and you want to play Core Warrior, then you typically don't have access to your torch yet because you don't have the expansion. So therefore I would say sword, longbow is probably the way to go. And that's for me B tier. It works, but your boon output is not that good and you're quite slow. It's a decent build, you're quite tanky, but it's not surprising in how much damage it does. Then we have Bladestorm. Bladestorm sadly works very bad with Celestial. It's a build that is very favored, very close to a power version all the time. You can make some tanky Bladestorm with Celestial, yes, but your damage is worse than if you would go for some kind of power build. So I personally would say Bladestorm is like low B tier or C tier because Celestial is just not working on the spec that well. Because your Gunsaber and your Dragon Trigger are just power scaling and you want to get as much crit chance and stuff as possible, and that's just Celestial doesn't provide that much. So I put it in C tier for now, but I think they are quite close. Then we have Berserker. I think Celestial Berserker is insane. It's one of the best builds that you can play on Celestial. It's really, really good. Easy S tier for me. Really, really strong. Be sure to check out my guide on it. I have actually guide about all the builds that I will put in S tier and some of the A tier builds as well. It's actually really, really good. So very easy to play, very fun to play, very strong. It's just perfect kit for a Celestial build. And lastly, we have Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker has a similar problem to Bladestorm, that you don't really want to play it as a Condi build because your traits don't support that. But it's a little bit better because you can actually run traits that give you defense in the trait line and run decent Condi-based weapon there. So I would say it's for me a B tier build. It works, but it's definitely not as good as the Berserker, which is definitely the best one. So Revenant is interesting because we have Core Revenant, which was never designed to be played as a core spec for the most part, because you always have, if you have Revenant, you have at least one expansion. And that means that it's one of the worst specs in general. And as a Celestial spec, you can play it decently well. I would say for me, it's actually better than Bladestorm, so it's B tier for me, because you can use Malex and you actually have decent value there. It's not an A tier build because it lacks a little bit of utility for a Celestial booster build, but I think it's actually a very good build still, or rather good build. Then we have Renegade. Renegade with Celestial gear is really good. You can use a short bow, you can use Mace Shield if you have access to Shield, or Mace X, a more aggressive version. I think this is a very good build. I would put it in S tier as well. It's more aggressive than, for example, the Berserker one, and therefore you have a little bit less sustain. You can also play it with Spear if you have access to it with Chantia Waltz, but overall, really good build as well. So Renegade definitely one of the best Revenant booster build that there is. And we have Herald. Herald is actually quite decent as well. You can use it very well in group content because you can provide quickness then and just be some kind of hybrid healer. I would say for me, Herald with Celestial Gear is also S tier. It's not as good as the Renegade. Those two are very good in solo play. The Herald is quite decent in group play as well. So I would say Celestial stats help a lot if you play it in a solo scenario. In group play, for the most part, the Celestial stats are more niche because oftentimes if you run Celestial, you are some kind of hybrid healer, maybe even some kind of quick DPS, quick healer, alacrity DPS, something in that direction. And that's very difficult sometimes because sometimes if you go in raids, you have to tank then if you have toughness, so that's toughness based. But still, the problem remains Celestial is more like a solo build gear stat, and that works well in unorganized groups, but in decently organized groups, you should go for more aggressive gear stats. So Herald is one of the exceptions. It works actually decently well with Celestial also in a group scenario. So that's why it's an S tier. Then we have Vindicator. Vindicator, again, very, very good solo build. One of the best ones, actually. So it's also S tier with Celestial. However, again, only works in solo build. I would never run a Celestial Vindicator in a group scenario. That's just overkill and not necessary, so keep that in mind. But for solo builds, really, really good. By the way, if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. And let's talk about Guardian. So we have Core Guardian. I think Core Guardian is decent with Celestial. It's not that good because it's like a little bit lackluster in what it can do. It just gets burning and that's about it. And burning is, you know, if you only have one condition and you use Celestial, then you waste a little bit of your expertise because you can actually just increase your burning duration and not the whole condition duration of everything. So overall, I would put it because of that in B tier, and it's also a little bit lacking a boon application. That's the same, of course, for Core Revenant and Core Warrior. They lack a little bit of core boons, so typically quickness, alacrity, those boons you lack on core classes because they can't provide them that easily. You have access to them, don't get me wrong, but not that crazy to upkeep them permanently. Then we have Firebrand. Celestial Firebrand is really good. It's one of the hardest builds to play as a Celestial build because you actually have so much flexibility and so many skills to learn and understand. But it's probably one of the best builds because you can actually play this build actually in World vs. World. You can play it in solo play. You can play it in group content. It's really good. So Celestial Firebrand is one of the best, if not the best booster build out there. And then we have Dragon Hunter. Dragon Hunter has a similar problem to Bladestorm and Spellbreaker, that it's very power-based and the Celestial is not really helping it. So I would put it in C tier as well. It's decent, you get some tankiness, but you lose a lot of DPS, and typically that's not what you want. It's very mediocre. You can make some crazy burn Dragon Hunter build, but it's not that good anymore. They nerfed it. So yeah, I feel like this is for me a C tier build. And then with Willbender. Willbender again is like very, very strong with Celestial. It's very fast-paced. It's not for everyone. It feels a little bit different than normal Guardian playstyle because you are more like a thief a bit, and the Celestial variant helps in that way that you're a bit more tanky. So overall, I think the Celestial Willbender is very fun to play. I think it's not as good as the S tier build, so maybe I put it in A tier, high A tier for now. It's very fun to play, especially if you have the Soto expansion. That's the one that you need. If you have Soto, then you might put it in S tier, but if you don't have it, you lack a little bit of Condi weapons, because you need the pistols for the most part. The light armor classes. So light armor classes are quite easy actually to rank because they are just very good. We have Core Elementalist. With Celestial, I would say works very well, but you don't have the weapon support to be absolutely insane. So I would put it in, let's say, high B tier, and say if you have any expansion with it, then you can put it in A tier because you have actually really good access to good weapons with Celestial. Dagger, for example, works very well. Maybe even reason to put it in A tier, maybe. But I would leave it for now in B tier because the A and S tier builds just a little bit better for now. It's a Celestial on Elementalist is very good because you have so many skills and a lot of different just utility baseline in the kit, and of course then you can make use a lot of the Celestial stats. Then we have Catalyst, easy S tier, really easy S tier, absolutely broken because you can play that as a solo build, really good solo build with Hammer. And you have very good Dagger builds in World vs. World, even if you want to play it, meta builds even. And in PvE, in a group scenario, you can even play some kind of hybrid healer as well there. So I think it's a very good build. And then we have Tempest. So Tempest is interesting. It works very well in some kind of Celestial group scenario, but in solo play, it's a little bit weaker. But I would still say S tier build for me because in group play, it's actually a meta build to play it with Celestial. So really, really good It's just utility providing offensive healer, so to say. Really nice. It just fits Elementalist very well. Then we have Weaver. So Celestial Weaver, I would say, is very selfish. You can play it, but I would say for the most part, it's not as good. The reason for that is that the self-buffing capabilities of Weaver is quite weak, so you don't really get that much value from your boon duration and that much healing power and that kind of stats. So I would say for me, Celestial Weaver B tier. Maybe you can make an argument for putting those two in A tier, but for now I will leave it like that. Mesmer is interesting. So Celestial Core Mesmer, I would say, has the problem that it has decent stats and actually the weapons are also quite decent for it. But you don't have good utility skills and you don't have really good just overall traits that support you. So the reason is that the core traits on Mesmer are quite, they lack some kind of usefulness. So as soon as you get the elite spec, you get like 10 levels in how much value you get. But as a core Mesmer, you lack some kind of utility there. So I would say because of the weapons, I would put it in B tier. But the just general usefulness that you have with it is too low. Personally, that's my take. If you then look as, for example, Virtuoso, which is the weakest of those three elite specs with Celestial here, it's still a very good pick. So I would put it in A tier just because it's very valuable. It's not a very good pick in groups, but even in roaming, in World vs. World, it's very good. And in solo play, it's also quite decent. But in solo play, Mirage is way better. Mirage is actually insane. Staff even extremely easy, just pressing 2 buttons or something, and you have crazy survivability and healing and damage. It's crazy. So this is a very good build, and you can even play it in a group. It's really good. And then you have Chronomancer, the same thing. It's extremely strong in a solo build, and even in a group, you can actually make it work if you really wanted to. But typically, it's more played in a solo build. I would say because of that, it's also S tier. So you can see Mesmer elite specs extremely strong. Just the core class lacking a bit. And then let's go to the Necromancer class. So Necromancer, core Necromancer, I would say is quite slow. It lacks a little bit of just good utilities, but overall it makes decent use out of the Celestial stats as well. It's like a little bit of a weaker version than the elite specs. That's just true for all the elite specs, I guess. But for me, again, just like Core Guardian, I would say decent user of it, but lacks a little bit of self-buffing capabilities. That's why it's in B tier. As soon as you go, for example, for Reaper, you get immense self-buffing capabilities in a solo scenario. Even in a group scenario, it can be useful. And of course, in World vs. World, very decent as well. So S tier for me. Harbinger, same thing as Reaper. Really strong. Even meta in roaming in World vs. World. With Celestial. In group play, I wouldn't use it with Celestial for the most part. It's just too weak there, but in solo play, it's really good as well. So I would put it in S tier for that. And Scourge, just very similar to the other 2 elite specs of Necromancer. Really strong with Celestial. A little bit easier to play for the most part. Maybe a bit slower, but very strong, especially because it's actually a meta build in group play. So a Celestial hybrid offensive healer, really, really strong. That's why I put it in high S tier as well, because you can actually play it in World vs. World. You can play it as a solo build. You can play it as a group support. It's really, really strong what it can do. And I like it a lot. So Firebrand and Scourge for me the highest. Maybe with Catalyst in S tier. Then let's go to the medium armor classes. So we have Engineer. I think Core Engineer is really interesting because Core Engineer makes a lot of use out of Celestial. So I would say Core Engineer is actually the first core class that goes in A tier. Because in A tier it's really, deserved. It has so much usefulness, especially with the elixirs. And just a lot of boons that it puts out, and especially if you use Condi weapons, you get amazing DPS as well, so overall really strong. Especially if you have access to a spear with Chance of Wilds, it gets even better, but still really good. A tier for me. It's not S tier because you have Mechanist. Mechanist is an S tier build for me for sure, really good in solo play, not as good in World vs. World with Celestial, but still decent. And in group play, you can actually play again some kind of hybrid healer as well. It's actually really decent there as well. So Mechanist, crazy good solo build. You can keep alacrity and quickness on yourself permanently. It's insane. Really, really strong. Then we have Scrapper. Again, Scrapper, really decent Celestial solo build. You can also play some kind of hybrid healer again. You can even play it in World vs. World. I would say for me, it's a little bit weaker than Mechanist personally, I would say, as a Celestial build, just because you don't have the support in your traits for a Condi build. So I would put it in high A tier and say maybe S tier depending who you ask. If you don't have Spear, definitely A tier. If you have Spear, it goes into S tier. Maybe. Then we have Holosmith. Holosmith again has a little bit of the problem that it can't buff it that easily. So I would say for me, low A tier, but it's still very good with Celestial. So you can see Engineer is actually really high in general. So Engineer is a very good pick with Celestial, just because you have your kits and your elixirs that help a lot with getting value from Celestial. And then we have Thief. So Thief is interesting, it's one of the classes that is actually the worst in self-buffing. So I would say Core Thief is actually quite bad with Celestial because you don't have that much self-buffing capabilities. You can make use out of the condition stats and you actually get decent damage with it. That's why it's in B tier, but the self-buffing lacks a bit. So I would say it's not very useful in a group scenario at all, and in solo scenario lack a lot of sustained boon application. The same goes actually for Daredevil. I think Conditioned Daredevil is just, you can play it with Celestial, but it's just worse because you can't provide boons to anyone and you can't provide boons to yourself in a solo scenario, so it's also B tier. Maybe it depends a bit how you play it, but maybe you can play it in a group if you're really unorganized and really want to play some Condi Thief there, but typically would go for a more aggressive gear stats then. Then we have Deadeye. Same goes for Deadeye. It's quite decent in a group, but I would never play it with Celestial stats. I would rather play it in a solo build, and that's why I would say solo build goes into S tier. Overall, I would say Celestial high A tier. Just because it's in a solo build, it's really good, but as soon as you go in a group or world versus world, it falls off drastically. So that's definitely the worst S tier build for sure. Then we have Spectre. Spectre is really good with Celestial in all game modes actually. It's really, really strong. You can play it as a hybrid healer, you can play it as a solo build, you can play it as a roamer. It's really good. It's definitely an S tier build. I would say Deadeye for me is only an S tier because it's a good solo build, but that's about it. Spectre on the other hand is just very strong with Celestial in all game modes. Lastly we have Ranger. Ranger I think is a very good class for Celestial. Core Ranger lacks a bit of self-buffing capabilities and just overall damage. That's why it's going in B tier, but it's better than C tier because it actually has Condi weapons that make sense with it in the trade line. And then we have Druid. I think Celestial Druid is a very good build for solo scenarios and actually works decently well in a group as well, if you know what you're doing. So Celestial definitely S tier with Druid. Then we have Celestial Soul Beast, actually a really good build for roaming and also a really good build for solo play. In a group I would not use it, but that's enough for me to actually put it in S tier as well. Really good for now Ranger Elite specs, and we have Untamed, the king of open world. It's extremely strong with Celestial. I have a guide about it, of course, as all the other S tier builds here as well. And it's extremely strong with Celestial. You have a lot of fun with it. It's really tanky, really crazy DPS as well. Really good solo build. I wouldn't use it in a group with the Celestial, but still S tier for me. Yeah, that's the tier list. So you can see Celestial is really, really good on a lot of elite specs. The core classes for the most part are decent with it, but not that good. And then you have some outliers that are just not really made for that. So overall, if you have the booster gear, use it on your character and you will be fine. And you will actually have probably a really good build. If you want to know a build for your class, be sure to check out my link in the description to all the Celestial builds in S tier and even A tier. And you can see Celestial is so good that no build is actually in D tier. That's on purpose. So I hope you enjoyed this tier list. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know your take on this as well in the comments. Thanks again to all my supporters on YouTube, Twitch and Patreon, and hope to see you all in the next video.